Thank you. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everyone, depending on where in the world you are. Most importantly, welcome. My name is Sarah Gunnery, and I'm an associate member of the IChemE.
My name is Wadood Hazine, and I'm a fellow of the IChemE. We're going to be your hosts for today's event, and we're very excited to be here, sharing the evening with a global audience.
We are delighted you are joining us as we say welcome to the 83rd President of the Institution of Chemical Engineers, Mark Apsey, and say thank you to the 82nd President, Nigel Hurst, for his highly successful presidential year.
We'll also hear from the retiring immediate past president, Professor David Bogle, and say hello to our new deputy president, Professor Raphael Okoni. Not quite the three tenors, for those of us old enough to remember them, but an hour of four presidents awaits. We're broadcasting this online, and we'll be recording the proceedings, which will be made available to the members of the IChemE via our website. Following the formal part of the evening, there'll be a drinks reception in the area outside this room, where you can meet the president or presidents and others. Sorry to those not with us in person today. We'd love to share the drinks and nibbles with you, but they don't quite taste the same digitally.
This evening is about welcoming our new president, Mark Apsey, and hearing about his ambitions and priorities for the institution and his presidential year. It's also about saying a huge thank you to the immediate president, Nigel Hurst, who, as you know, has been instrumental in shaping the IChemE over many years, not least over the last 12 months. Nigel, would you please join me on stage? Over the last year, Nigel has been inexhaustible in his energy and efforts on behalf of the institution, attending countless meetings and discussions and making many presentations, both in person and via video calls, including for member groups in the UK and Malaysia, Chem UK, Clean Energy Special Interest Group, and parliamentarians. He's even become a media star, contributing to the recent IChemE video produced by ITN. Earlier this week, he met in person with the trustees of our American counterpart, the American Institute of Chemical Engineering. And through all of this, he's done his duty in consuming his fair share of lunches and dinners on behalf of IChemE, something he makes look effortless.
Thank you.
His impact, enthusiasm, and continued passion to spread the word about chemical and process engineering and the IChemE is well known and hugely appreciated. What is perhaps not so well known is Nigel's very personal commitment to helping young people achieve their potential. I first met Nigel in 2018, just after my A-levels had been completed, when he presented me with a scholarship from the Education Trust he had co-founded and sponsored for the previous 15 years. The award was in recognition of my achievement and potential, and throughout my undergraduate years studying chemical engineering at Imperial College London, I knew him as a source of advice, of wisdom, and of support. His contribution during those years played a significant part in helping me to achieve my first-class honours in my master's degree and in the start of my career at Syngenta. I've worked with Nigel professionally since graduation and have fond memories of joining him at the House of Commons earlier this year as we presented to selected members on strategies for unlocking the workforce for a green transition. Just one of the many ways Nigel has recognised the importance of voices of young engineers being heard. He also supports a range of other organisations that focus on young people achieving their potential, including the Royal Northern College of Music and the Ogden Trust based in Cambridge. Nigel, I am just one of the many young people you've helped and mentored throughout your career, and we are truly grateful.
Thank you.
And now, Nigel, over to you for a reflection on your presidential year and to welcome Mark on behalf of all of us into his new role.
Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. You make me feel very humble. And I'm grateful to Mark for giving me 5 minutes of what's his evening to just reflect a little on what we've achieved together over the last 12 months. It doesn't seem like 12 months since I was standing here with the chains on. And as some of you know, I spent 3.5 years before I became Deputy President as Chair of Congress, where I listened to all the complaints, aspirations and everything else from members around the world with their ideas about how IChemE could be improved. So last year I talked about the 4 C's. I don't know if we've got them on the slide. I'll have to talk to you if we haven't. Right, we had 4 C's in this order. Collaboration, making an impact by working with partners to ensure chemical engineering voices are heard. Well, I can report that our collaboration with other institutions has never been better. We've recently, this week, spent 3 days with our American colleagues from IChE, and we have developed a new spirit of cooperation and some positive actions moving forward. We've set up an alliance to look at the impact of hydrogen in terms of future energy transition. Our joint webinar had more than 500 people sign up for it. We've been talking today about bringing young people into a love of engineering education, STEM education, and what we can do together to do that. We've also been talking about the ethics, engineering ethics of AI, and you can expect some things to come out of that shortly. We're building a better relationship with Engineers Australia. We have run various roundtables to inform and hopefully educate government ministers and civil servants about some of the challenges around net zero. And I'm delighted to tell you that we've been granted observer status at COP29 in Baku, which Mark has kindly put on his agenda to attend. The second C was continuous learning, providing development opportunities for chemical engineers at all their career stages. Well, our technical training and non-technical training has never been better and more widely available. Apart from the webinar on hydrogen, we've grown the Sustainability Hub, which past President Ian Schott kindly funded, and we have more courses available than ever before. Community, the third C, about creating an inclusive community for chemical engineers to contribute to society, something I'm very passionate about. Well, we've set up a new online community, IChemE Connect. Those who remember some of the traumas we had with the previous online communities will be delighted to know that it is entirely convivial. There's lots of interaction going on with exchange of technical ideas, and we're looking how we can grow member groups internationally, and we're about to launch a mentoring portal as part of that because, as Sarah's pointed out, the benefit of mentoring of young people by those further on in the career is immense. 2,000 of our members have already signed up to IChemE Connect, which was our target for the whole of the year, and it's been running for 3 or 4 months. And the last C is choice, increasing the number and diversity of young people choosing chemical engineering. As I said at lunchtime, global problems require global solutions, and most of them need a chemical engineer in there somewhere. You can throw money at problems to solve them, but to get people to choose a career in engineering is not a money problem, it's a psychological problem. And we need to be passionate with young people to show them how engineering can have a beneficial effect in solving the world's problems. I'm sure Mark's going to talk about this in a minute. We've launched Discover ChemEng to pull all this together, which is a set of resources to be taken into schools to share with young people. We've made membership of IChemE free for students. Needless to say, the number of students now participating is growing enormously. Early careers mentoring is taking off, and we have a virtual work experience portal for school students launching shortly. All this has resulted in a growth in membership. We're now at 31,000 members, 40% of which are chartered members and fellows. And your society, the IChemE, has never been in better health. None of this would have been possible without the support of the staff, in particular our highly enthusiastic and energetic, she runs me ragged, new CEO Yvonne Baker has been the driving force behind this. And as I said to the staff the other day, we've got some great new staff who've joined us. They've joined what was already a great team. And together, I think we've got a great future in front of us. So I'd like to welcome Mark to the stage now. We're going to stand for a second whilst we shake hands and have our photographs taken. So don't assume that something's gone wrong. But I'm delighted to hand the chain of office over to you, Mark. One more. Yeah. The right sort of smile.
Very important. Well, thank you, Nigel, for that warm introduction and for your guidance and support over the last year. I look forward to continuing to work with you and all the trustees over the coming 12 months. Welcome. It's a huge honour to stand here today as your 83rd president and see so many friends and colleagues, past, present, and I hope future, in this fantastic venue. A warm welcome too if you're joining online. I look forward to meeting as many of you as possible. Since this is being recorded, you might be watching from the luxury of some future vantage point, and I welcome you too. I hope my thoughts still make some sense. Thank you all for taking time out of your day to listen. Our time is valuable, and it is important how we choose to spend it. If you'll permit me, it is time I want to explore a little with you today. But first, it's getting quite hot in here, as I think you'll have noticed. And not just in here, everywhere. If you're not familiar, this is a visualization by Professor Ed Hawkins from the University of Reading of global annual temperature variation from 1850 to 2023. Relative to the average during years 1971 to 2000. The deeper the blue, the cooler the year. The deeper the red, the hotter. I think it really is striking. 2023 was officially the hottest year on record globally, at about 1.48 degrees C above pre-industrial levels. Last year, on the 3rd of July, we recorded the highest global average temperature for 125,000 years. Then on the 4th of July, we beat that record. Then on the 6th of July, we beat it again. This year, May was officially the hottest May on record. But global average temperatures are really only part of the story. Let's look at some other numbers. Also in 2023, 21 nations set new all-time place-based temperature records spread across the planet. We saw 41.6 degrees in Peru, 42.9 in Vatican City, 44 degrees in Albania, 50.4 in Morocco, and a mind-boggling 52.2 in China. That's a pretty hot collection and certainly sounds unpleasant. The point is, we don't experience global averages, and talking in terms of a global temperature average of 17 degrees C doesn't really capture our human experience. We experience local temperatures wherever we happen to find ourselves in the world and at a specific time of year. But these quoted temperatures don't tell us the full story either, since they're only really dry bulb air temperatures. As humans, we have evolved to keep our bodies at an optimum core temperature. When it gets hot, we sweat. Probably outside earlier for those in the room. As sweat evaporates, it has a cooling effect on our body as heat is taken away. 31 degrees C wet bulb feels like 50 degrees to our bodies. And if we hit 35 degrees C, it feels like 70, which is unsurvivable for humans. Even if we have a supply of water and are sat in the shade, we would be dead within 6 hours. I found this statistic remarkable when I first heard it. This is because sweat simply stops evaporating. Our cooling system fails and our internal organs start to shut down. But I did promise to talk about time. It's a dimension we use a lot as chemical engineers and one that has always fascinated me. One of my favourite science fiction shows is Doctor Who. I remember watching as a kid, mostly from behind the sofa, and then watching all of the new iterations with my children. How cool to be able to travel anywhere and any time in the universe. And I think it's a brilliant way to inspire young minds to think about questions of science and technology and engineering and maths. So let's go back in time. Back to 1771. This is Sir Richard Arkwright's Cromford Mill, arguably where it all began to go right and wrong for humanity. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site nestled in the Derbyshire countryside and the birthplace of the factory system. It was the world's first successful water-powered cotton spinning mill and marked the cornerstone of the Industrial Revolution. The mill transformed the cotton industry from small cottage enterprise to one of large-scale factory production. Copycat mills across the country meant that by the early 1800s, cotton was Britain's major import and export. The age of the factory started here, laying the foundations of the discipline of chemical engineering to evolve. Let's jump forward now to 1890. It was common knowledge then that higher temperatures speed up reactions, often doubling the rate for a 10-degree rise, but the reasons were not well understood. In 1899, Svante Arrhenius combined the concepts of activation energy and the Boltzmann distribution law to create this equation that will be familiar to all of you as chemical engineers, and defining, as it does, the impact of temperature on rate of chemical reaction, where K is the rate constant, EA is the activation energy, R is the universal gas constant, and T is the temperature in Kelvin. I almost didn't become a chemical engineer. At school, I really loved maths. Logic and philosophy combined to solve problems with numbers, and you always got a tick at the end if you got it right, which is really very rewarding. But I need to thank a couple of people for guiding me at crucial moments in my past. Firstly, my father, John Apsey, who's here with us this evening. He studied natural sciences at Cambridge, went on to become a chemistry teacher, and now retired from teaching, although I'm not sure, speaking to him, that's entirely possible, remains the chair of chemistry for the Nuffield A-level course. He persuaded me to take chemistry A-level at Worthing Sixth Form College alongside maths and physics. Secondly, I want to remember Gary Light, who by chance became my A-level chemistry teacher. As well as that, he was coincidentally my father's chemistry teacher as well, many, many years before. He was brilliant. And when we were choosing degree courses, his son, at the time a chemical engineer, came to our sixth form to tell us what he did. It must have sparked something in my younger self. I wanted to continue learning in a topic that used all of my A-levels, was challenging, vocational, but kept options open for many future career paths. Chemical engineering was the thing. I was lucky enough to receive offers from many of our fine chemical engineering university departments and chose to go to the University of Exeter. More on that later. Anyway, I was talking about equations, specifically Arrhenius. Did you know about Arrhenius's work on atmospheric carbon dioxide and global temperature in the late 1800s? If you didn't, you can look it up on the Royal Society of Chemistry's website. In April 1896, he published a paper that was the first to try and quantify the contribution of carbon dioxide to the greenhouse gas effect, and to speculate about whether variations in atmospheric concentration of carbon dioxide have contributed to long-term variations in climate. We now have a huge body of work looking at the science of Earth's climate and sophisticated ways to measure and analyse what's going on. The graph on your left shows a series of carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere over time for the last 500,000 years. Or to put it another way, the most recent 0.01% of time since the Earth formed around 4.5 billion years ago. Time's a funny thing. It's really difficult for us as humans to comprehend, I think, given we haven't been around very long and we only really exist in the present. So, to put this into context, let's consider some of the events in relation to this long period of time. At the start of the graph, 500,000 years ago, Neanderthals were evolving in Europe and in the Middle East. And CO2 levels were 250 parts per million. If we fast forward to 200,000 years ago, Homo sapiens evolved in East Africa, and again, levels were around 250 parts per million. We can keep going forward past the extinction of Neanderthals 45,000 years ago, past the settling of America 16,000 years ago, past the agricultural revolution only 12,000 years ago, onwards through first kingdoms forming 5,000 years ago, through the emergence of religions 2,500 years ago, and past the scientific revolution 500 years ago, right up to the time of Arkwright, when levels were around 280 parts per million. Throughout this long period, levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere have bounced about, as you can see on the graph. If this was a trend plot on a chemical plant, you could draw control lines through about 180 parts per million at a minimum and 300 parts per million maximum. And we might feel some success at keeping a particular variable within this band. But something is disturbing this relative stability. If we zoom in to the last 250 years and look at the graph on the right, we can clearly see the rapid upward trend to the point we are now at 419 parts per million. Or thinking about it another way, 1.4 times the upper control line for the last 500,000 years. Perhaps Arrhenius was onto something. 100 years later, and carbon dioxide entered my working life very early on. My first job after leaving university was at engineering consultancy W.S. Atkins, based in Epsom. And my first project was working, in fact, at this brewery, not making beer, but designing and building a carbon dioxide recovery plant. We captured the fermentation gases from the fermenting hall and fed them forward into basically a large balloon or bladder to try and store the variable quantities of gas evolving from the fermenters so that we could feed them into the recovery plant. In that, we passed the gases firstly through a water scrubber to remove the soluble organics before passing the gas through deodorizer beds of activated carbon to remove some of the remaining organics. After that, the process went through a compression stage, so we pressurized the gas up to 17 to 18 bar gauge before drying it and then ultimately liquefying it so that the liquid CO2 we had, we could then pass through a stripping column to strip out the last bits of remaining oxygen. It's important to take the oxygen out because this gas was then going to be used back in the bottling process as the fizz in the beer. The really interesting thing about this process for me was once we got it started using ammonia refrigeration plant to liquefy the first batch of gas, and then we had enough gas coming through, we could then, provided production levels in the fermentation hall matched the bottling hall, we could use the newly liquefied and purified gas to liquefy more gas, thus making it quite an energy efficient project and resource efficient project as we were recovering the CO2. It really was a perfect project for a keen graduate fresh out of university because I got to work on all stages, the design, the procurement and specification of the equipment, the construction and the commissioning, all in the space of 12 months. from a really great team. I also experienced my first site incident. During commissioning, I arrived for an early shift to pick up where things had been paused overnight. The deodorizer bed had been stopped partway through a regeneration cycle. Regeneration involved switching over the duty standby beds and then flowing hot air through the activated carbon to drive off the organics. Everything looked fine, so we restarted the process from the control room. A short while later, I was shocked to see a bonfire graphic appear on the control screen. I think the DCS programmers were having some fun with that when they put that in there. I certainly never expected to see it, but I did. So I went out into the plant room to check. The local temperature gauges embedded in the carbon were showing a relatively low temperature. But as I approached, I could feel the heat hit me. The local gauges were spiral wound and had expanded beyond the scale on the range of the gauges and back around so that they appeared to be much lower. There was clearly a fire raging inside that bed. We raised the alarm and then monitored the control system as it turned off the air and heat and switched back to carbon dioxide, which eventually extinguished the fire. We dug out the ruined bed, checked the vessel, refilled it, and ultimately delivered a working plant. It was a known hazard, so we had applied our knowledge and skills as chemical engineers in appropriate mitigations at the time, and as a graduate, other people had really helped guide that, but I was very grateful that morning. But what about the hazards faced from global heating? We all know them by now, but I feel it's worth restating some of them. Not to depress us or raise fear levels, but as a simple list of consequences we might consider if we were carrying out a risk assessment or a hazard for the Earth. Things like sea level rise and desertification, crop failure, water shortages, storms of increased frequency and intensity, which we see globally now, increased plague and disease, and the potential for civil unrest as people fight over diminishing resources. These are some of the hazards we need to work hard to mitigate. And what about the cause? Well, it's generally accepted we're now living in the Anthropocene. That means human activity is the determining factor driving what happens on our single, shared, and somewhat lonely spaceship of a planet. So what can we do about it? Well, I studied, as I said earlier, chemical engineering at Exeter, and I had one professor many of you may remember, Professor Robin Turner. Those of you who studied under him may also recall he had 4 rules for chemical engineering. The first rule was to do a mass balance. The second, a heat balance. His third rule was to hope that all reactions you encountered were first order. I think the maths got complicated, if not. And the fourth was that he was always right. Now, clearly, rules 3 and 4 were a bit extra and a clever way to help our young minds remember. But balance, mass and heat are really at the core of what chemical engineering is about for me in terms of what we do and how we think. And it is balance we need to find. This is the Brundtland definition of sustainability. The 3 pillars, economic, environment, equity, overlap to create a sustainable balance at the centre of this Venn diagram. I want to extend our thanks again to past President Ian Schott for his generous support to create the Sustainability Hub and keep it free for our members. It's a fantastic resource, and I encourage all of you to take full advantage of it. A couple of years ago, we celebrated our centenary. How do we want to be remembered as a profession in another 100 years' time? When contemplating the future, it's common to consider different scenarios. So let me paint a couple of scenarios for us here. Scenario 1 is that we are remembered as being complicit in the continuing destruction of our habitable planet by enabling greater material consumption, resulting in increased pollution of land, sea, and air that accelerates us towards some dystopian future, possibly one where humans cannot survive. Or scenario 2, where we are remembered as leading the transition to a sustainable future by transforming the industries in which we work to operate in a way that meets the needs of society in a non-destructive way so that humankind can continue to thrive. Ultimately, history will judge us, but time matters. The rate of change matters. In our climate change statement, first published in 2020 and refreshed in 2022, we set out our collective acknowledgement as an institution of the climate science and, importantly, made some commitments. I want to pull out two in particular this evening. Firstly, we made a commitment to think about developing detailed plans for economically sustainable and secure transitions to net zero carbon emissions in all areas of chemical engineering practice and regions where members are active. For me, this is an area where we can have a profound impact if we want to be remembered for the right reasons. All of us, whichever sector we have applied our training and skills to, have a unique ability to transform those sectors which we deeply understand and have spent significant time working in. It's not good enough to settle for the way things have always been done. We must strive to redesign and re-engineer processes to deliver essential products in a sustainable way. The obligation is on all of us. Which brings me to the second commitment I would like to highlight. We also committed to update our code of conduct to explicitly include obligations on all professional members to act in accordance with the principles of sustainability, prevent avoidable adverse impact on the environment and society, act to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions, and adapt to a changing climate, and protect and, where possible, improve the quality of built and natural environments. This is no small thing. When Professor David Bogle was president, he majored on ethics as a theme. We have broader obligations as a profession than simply feeding short-term economic goals. We intrinsically recognise this when it comes to safety, and we have led the way on process safety. This commitment reminds us explicitly about some of those obligations insofar as the natural environment is concerned, and I invite you all to consider what you can do to make a difference for the better. Having considered some of our collective history and potential futures without the help of a TARDIS, I want to finish by coming back to the present, and specifically what to look out for over the coming 12 months and how to get involved. Last year, we published our updated strategy 2028+. Our vision, engineering a sustainable world, and our mission, putting chemical and process engineering at the heart of a sustainable future, benefiting members, society, and the environment. Nigel, and indeed many of our other past presidents here tonight, have advised me that time goes very quickly. So don't expect lots of new initiatives or schemes to be launched. We want to continue to build on the 4 Cs, which Nigel has already spoken about this evening. As an organisation and a profession, we have done a lot of thinking, changed the way we work, and created a strong foundation to move forward. But I don't think we have done enough to communicate the valuable work that we do, both in our day jobs and as volunteers. I hope to spend my time helping us to find our voice. I would like to uncover and amplify stories of chemical engineers doing great things that we can share with and beyond our membership. We will be recognising chemical engineering contributions through our awards and medals, but if you have a story to share, please get in contact. I'm really keen for us to engage more with governments, industry partners, employers, academia, professional engineering institutions, and the public. And as Nigel talked about collaboration, we need to do this to help further understanding of our profession and encourage collaboration to achieve our vision. We cannot transform the world alone, and we have a power as the institution to convene cross-discipline groups on important topics. Expect to see more roundtables with experts, policymakers, and chemical engineers all contributing to make impact and support change. I think we also need to be confident and proactive in communicating outside our own 30,000 members. We should own and be very proud of the things we have contributed to society over the last 100 years, whilst recognising that society now needs us to apply our skills to transform our industries to deliver a different and sustainable way. We recently published our Technical Challenge Report, drawing on expertise and perspectives from our global membership, and we'll use this to inform this engagement and communication programme. The other thing we need is more chemical engineers to take on the challenges ahead. We must inspire the next generation of diverse talent to study, join, and contribute to the challenges humanity faces. To help, we've launched our new Discover ChemEng campaign, aligned to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, with materials suitable for teachers to use across all age groups. So please check out these resources if you haven't, and share them with every single teacher that you know. Finally, I'm really delighted to be able to announce preparations for a new chemical engineering course at the University of Exeter. I was part of the last cohort to graduate before the course was closed, and I'm extremely happy we are able to support the engineering department there, create new capacity for young people to enter our profession. Thank you so much for listening. It is a huge honour to be your 83rd president, and it's a role I'm only able to take on thanks to the incredible support of my family, and particularly my wife, Teresa, who is here today, along with our daughters, Madeline and Tilly, and our youngest son, Edward. I'm looking forward to meeting as many of you as possible and hearing about all the amazing things you are doing or planning to do to engineer a sustainable world. And if you're watching this from 50 or 100 years in the future, you'll be far better placed to judge whether we have succeeded in delivering our vision. I sincerely hope we didn't let you down, because time machines are the realm of science fiction. There isn't a way to unwind our mistakes, and there isn't another life-sustaining planet within reach. We know from Arrhenius that as temperature increases, so does the rate of reaction. As our planet gets hotter, we will have to react faster to bring things back into balance. We must act now, in the present, to secure our future. And I'm extremely optimistic and excited that we will. Thank you.
Interesting, thought-provoking, inspiring address. I have a few questions, if I may. First, you talked about the influences on your journey into chemical engineering, and I'm sure many of us can relate to them, particularly the influence of parents and teachers. You're obviously hugely committed to encouraging more young people of all backgrounds to understand that chemical and process engineering, what it is, and it was great to hear you talk about Discover ChemEng and the reinvigorated schools and young persons program. How else would you suggest that members of all ages might be encouraged and might encourage young people to be aware and to consider a future of chemical and process engineering?
Well, thank you for joining us, Wadood. And well, the first thing is to ask all members to get involved. I've talked about Discover ChemEng and how we might share that, and I'm sure we all know many, many teachers between us. But also get involved with some of the other initiatives that we're launching and that Nigel spoke about already. But the new virtual work experience platform, we're hoping to reach thousands of people with that and offer opportunities for people to get real world experience in our industry, and so that they can make choices going forward. The other thing I'd say is we've got some great stuff coming up this year. So in November, we're hosting the Big Bang on location in Rugby, and we're expecting some 500 young people to join there and talk to chemical engineers. But clearly, we need some chemical engineers to come and talk to them. So if you'd like to get involved with that, please get in touch. We've also launched our Young Engineering Awards recently. And in July, we're going to run the first one of those global awards for age groups from 4 to 19 and 19 to 30. And we're looking to expand that as we go forward. And I would just encourage everybody to talk about chemical engineering with your friends and your family, because chemical engineering touches everything we use in our day-to-day lives, whether it's developing vaccines or pharmaceutical products, or whether it's food and drink, water, or energy. Everything we do now in the modern world, somewhere along the line, has had a chemical engineer involved with it. And so I would, as I said earlier, not be shy about explaining that to people. The last thing I'd say is, and I hinted at it in the talk just there. We've just launched, as of yesterday, a space on the website where if you have got a story you want to share, you can share short video content with us directly, and we'll curate that and promote that and use that. And it doesn't have to be polished, and it doesn't have to be, well, we want to see short videos of young chemical engineers doing real things in the chemical engineering environment.
That's fantastic. I especially like the video idea. Another key group that you clearly want to encourage are those at university or early careers. What would you say to these people at the beginning of their chemical engineering career and IChemE career as well?
Well, I'm going to give the same answer. So get involved, and get involved early. As an undergraduate, join IChemE, and we have made the membership free for students. And I think that's really, really important. I joined the Institution of Chemical Engineers as an undergraduate, and it gave me great opportunities to meet more experienced chemical engineers who then shared their knowledge, and we went on trips to all sorts of places like the Plymouth Gin Distillery and the Cadbury's Chocolate Factory in Bath when it was still there. But it gives you that access, and you can start your professional journey then. But having joined, you can also volunteer. There's not an age limit or age restriction on getting involved, and there's lots and lots of opportunities to join Congress or act as early career representatives on committees. And I think you'll find it rewarding. I've found it very rewarding to volunteer for the institution over the years. Not only do you learn lots, you meet great people, and we've got a lot of great people here in the room and hopefully online joining. The other thing I'd say is, if you're not sure, let us know, and let us know how we can support you to get involved, because that's what we want to do. We want to create a great experience for all our members and get as many active and involved as possible.
I mean, you're clearly passionate, Mark, about the energy transition, transition to a sustainable world, as set out in the IChemE's vision of engineering a sustainable world. If you have a call to action for members, regardless of age, experience, or career stage, what would it be?
I talked about it a bit in the address, but I would say it's about balance. Okay, we have finite resources to deliver what society needs and wants from us. And as I've already said, chemical engineers are involved in all the sectors that provide those things. And so what I would say is it's incumbent on all of us to apply our skills and deep understanding of our industries to transform those sectors. And to do that, maybe we need to learn a bit more about sustainability. So get onto the Sustainability Hub if you're not sure, and have a look at that. Take a look back at the Energy and Resource Efficiency Guide that we published some years ago, which sets out some principles and just ways of thinking about how you can tackle it within your sector. Get started.
That's great. No, thanks. Thank you, Mark. And it's really fascinating to hear your thoughts about these key areas. I'm sure everyone here will take something from your address and the answers on how they can act. I guess before we close, I'd like to now hand over for the final word to Professor David Bogle, our President of 2022-2023, to propose the vote of thanks in the traditional way. Before David speaks, however, I'd like to thank him on behalf of the institution for all his hard work in the run-up during his presidential year and beyond. Please could you join me in showing your appreciation in the usual way.
Thank you very much for that. So it's my great honor to present a vote of thanks on behalf of us all here and wherever we might be in the world. So we've heard a fantastic talk from Mark today. I mean, nobody will be surprised if you know him to hear that sustainability and the climate emergency was at the center of his message, because that's really at the center of his role, and it's also his passion as well, as I think you can see. But it's certainly at the center of his role as the senior vice president at Ameresco. So he particularly highlighted the commitments that we as the IChemE made and on behalf of our members in the climate change statement, and at the heart of the new strategy, the recent last year's strategy that came out, all about engineering a sustainable world. So it's something he's very passionate, but it's very much at the heart of what we think is so key for IChemE to be promoting and to be promoting throughout all of our members, and indeed, of course, beyond our members through chemical engineering and beyond. So, of course, he also took us back to a bit of history, right back to the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution. There's some rather interesting things there. And I wonder how many of us knew that Arrhenius had some things to say about the effect of CO2 on the atmosphere. And indeed, that somebody was talking about it quite so long ago. That was very interesting for me to discover. And of course, he was exhorting us all to consider what we can do to make a difference, to make a difference for the better in this, rather challenged world that we have with confronting us in the future, and to what extent that was an ethical stance of us all as chemical engineers and members of the Institution of Chemical Engineering. And as he said, time matters and the rate of change matters. So we need to get on with it sooner rather than later. So Mark also told us that he hoped to spend his year helping us find our voice, and I think that was a very important point to be made. We know this is our mission, but we need to be better at telling the world about it, telling our friends and neighbours, telling everybody, because not everybody sees this as what our role is, and we need to be a little bit clearer and more forthright about that, and convincing everybody, to all our friends and neighbours and everyone else, to come with us through examples, as he said, and through the vision that we have. And I know he's good at this, and I think he will lead us to do it better. So I think that's been a fantastic talk from Mark today, and we wish him all, I won't say luck, but all the very best wishes for the forthcoming year, for his presidential year. And I ask you to thank Mark very much in the usual way. And one other thing I'd just like to do is, since I'm now just come off the board, I've been on the board for 3 years, I'm one of the retiring members of the board. So it's obviously, I would like to give all the people thanks to everybody who supported me, from staff and members and indeed beyond, and particularly, of course, in my presidential year. But I would like particularly to give thanks on behalf of all the members, everybody here today, all our members, everybody online, for the other retiring members of the board. That's Alexander Meldrum, who was Vice President Learning Society, Rob Best for Vice President Qualifications, Maxine Isles-Height, Mark Sutton, and Rhys Tucker. So please join me in thanking them for their great contribution.
That concludes the formal part of the evening and the presidential address of Mark Apsey, MBE, the 83rd President of the Institution of Chemical Engineers. Those of you with us in person, please feel free to join us next door for drinks.
Those of you who have joined us online, thank you very much, and we'd like to wish you a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are.